and welcome to yet another edition of your weekly international current affairs program, Globe Watch, from the Cameroon Radio Television, with me, Charles Ebune, 8 from the Apostolic Nunciature, the Pope's official residence here in Yaoundé, Cameroon. Of the world's roughly 3 billion people who are Christians, at least 1.3 billion of them are Roman Catholics. Roman Catholics becoming one of the largest religious groupings in the world, with a huge impact in areas like education, health, and the promotion of the human being. The whole Roman Catholic establishment is managed from the Vatican City, where the headquarters of the church and the state is found. And one of its key features is the importance of the Roman Catholic diplomacy in the world, or what they call the Vatican diplomacy. My guest today on Globe Watch is the Vatican Secretary for Relations with other states and international organizations in Cameroon currently, Archbishop Paul Richard Gallagher. Welcome to Globe Watch, and thank you very much indeed for talking to us exclusively.
Well, thank you for the invitation to appear on your program. I'm very happy to speak to you.
Officially, you are in Cameroon for the 10th anniversary of the establishment of the framework agreement between Cameroon and the Holy See. Apart from that official reason, is there any other motive which justifies your presence in Cameroon at this time of the year?
Well, I've wanted to come to Cameroon for a long time. I count amongst my friends several of the apostolic nuncios who served in Cameroon, and they have invited me in the past, but this seemed to be the ideal moment to come. Also, we believe that we need to give more and more attention to Africa, and I don't pretend to know this part of Africa very well. I've served in the East, and I've served in part of Central Africa, so it's a great opportunity to get to a little bit more about your continent.
You arrived in Cameroon last Thursday, November 16th or 14th, at the Yaoundé Simalène International Airport, welcomed by the Cameroonian diplomatic establishment. You had audiences with the Prime Minister, Head of Government, Joseph Dion-Gouté, as well as the Minister of External Relations, Eugène Belambela. You were equally at the Minor Basilica for a pontifical mass, and you were at the headquarters of the National Episcopal Conference of Cameroon for a conversation with the Cameroonian Episcopate. How have you seen the nature of what some qualify as a vibrant church in Cameroon?
Well, it's quite clear that the church here in Cameroon has a well-established structure. It is functioning very well. It has a positive prospects for vocations, for members, people joining the clergy and the religious orders. And I can see that the lay people who are attending our churches are very committed and very full of good intentions with regard to spreading of the faith, strengthening the faith. So it's been for me a most encouraging experience so far.
Well, the 10th anniversary of the signing of the framework agreement between Cameroon and the Holy See is just one of the hallmarks of the long-standing relationship between Cameroon and the Roman Catholic establishment in general. It's roughly 134 years ever since the first Catholics stepped their legs in what is today Cameroon. That should be in 1890 in a locality called Marienberg in the current littoral region of Cameroon. Cameroon and the Vatican established formal diplomatic relations in 1966 following the establishment of the Vatican as a state in the 1929 Lateran treaties. And we have had 3 papal visits in Cameroon, and both of Cameroon's presidents since independence and reunification have been at the Vatican. How do you qualify the nature of relations between Cameroon and the Holy See today?
Well, we have very healthy relations, I think. There is a flow of exchanges, as you've just mentioned, between the Vatican and Yaoundé, and we are pretty well in constant contact through the Apostolic Nuncio here, through the Ambassador to the Holy See, and also the visits of bishops and other church leaders in these years. Not so long ago, the bishops all came to Rome for their ad limina visit, and it was a very good opportunity to meet and exchange not only with the Holy Father, Pope Francis, but also other heads of departments in the Vatican.
The framework agreement, this is not the only country in Africa. You have signed it, by my understanding and research, you have signed with roughly 14 other African countries, including Muslim-dominant countries like Burkina Faso. How unique is the nature or the character of the framework agreement between Cameroon and the Holy See, which defines the legal framework of the Catholic Church in Cameroon? I know that Ecclesia in Africa was, of course, signed here in the same building that you and I are meeting today.
Well, we cannot say that the framework agreement is unique, because it's similar to other such agreements between the Holy See and various countries in Africa. Generally speaking, Africa is the part of the world which is most interested these days in negotiating such agreements. This one, I think, is good, but agreements are only as good as their application. And that is an ongoing work in process. And I think the bishops are very keen that should be the case. And we too are going to try and to continue to work with government here through the Apostolic Nunciature to make sure that the agreement is fully applied to the benefit both of the Church and the state, but above all of the common good of the Cameroonian people.
You are just talking about the Cameroonian people. Around the world today, the Roman Catholic establishment runs roughly plus 200,000 schools. Nearly 62 million pupils attend nursery and primary schools in Roman Catholic institutions worldwide, which simply means that education is very prominent in the work which you do, sometimes as a charity organization. Why is the Church so much investing in education as the pathway for human emancipation?
Well, I think education is fundamental to human existence and human thing. It is a right of people. Everybody, whether you're a small child or whether you're a young adult, everybody aspires to greater knowledge and understanding. And the Church has for centuries appreciated that, and therefore committed itself to running education institutions at all levels, and very often in establishing new missions. Building of a school has been judged to be more important than building of a church.
When you look at the graduates of Roman Catholic schools in Cameroon and where they serve around the world, and possibly you work with them, of course, one of the best known graduates, it's of course the President of the Republic, himself trained in a Roman Catholic institution. One of them just celebrated 75 years of existence, the College Vogt here in Yaoundé, Cameroon. Are you proud of them, those who are graduate from Roman Catholic schools?
Well, you can't make a general judgment and say we're proud of all our ex-alumni, but many of them have had very distinguished careers, and that does make us feel proud. What we, I think, try to do in Catholic education is not only impart knowledge and prepare people for, shall we say, work or employment, but empower people to make a contribution to society, to give something back from the things that they have received. Now, if they are doing that, if they are serving the people in their country, then that fills us with great satisfaction.
At least 5,000 hospitals around the world too are managed by the Roman Catholic Church. When you look at other social services provision in Cameroon, in terms of water, in terms of health, in terms of scholarships and whatsoever, we already talked about education with the presence of the Catholic University of Central Africa, which of course you'll be visiting in the course of your visit to Cameroon. When you look at other social services, you conclude that you are helping Cameroon attain its development goal, right?
Well, the Church will always, wherever it is, in whatever circumstances it finds itself, will be looking at what people's needs are, what is the situation of society, and trying to respond to those needs in an appropriate and generous way. Now, if that means the establishment of hospitals or clinics or pharmacies or other sorts of social services, many places we have homes for orphans, we have homes for elderly people who maybe don't have the support of family. Yes, it's a matter of being in close contact with your people, with the people, because of course we don't make discrimination between Catholics and non-Catholics. It's a service for everybody, and trying to respond in an appropriate way.
Well, now let's talk Vatican diplomacy. At the Minor Basilica yesterday, you started mentioning some of the topics which are so dear to Pope Francis, and one of them is, of course, violence and extremism. And you talked abundantly about the situation in the Northwest and Southwest, and the situation in the far north region with terrorism. Is that really a preoccupation of the Vatican?
Well, terrorism, wherever it manifests itself, particularly when it has a religious dimension, is a great concern to the Holy See and to the Holy Father. We're very keen on pointing out that acts of violence and terrorism can never be justified with reference to religious faith, or to God, for that matter. But indeed, conflict resolution, bringing peoples together, trying to help people find peace and reconciliation, that will always be a priority of the Church. But most of our work, to be frank, is done in supporting what the local churches are doing, what the initiatives of the local bishops. That's where we have an impact. There will be some Catholic NGOs, maybe international or national NGOs, who will be working to promote
like Catholic
peace.
Relief Service.
Exactly, and we will be encouraging them and supporting them. But this is a priority because, as you know, the Holy Father has talked about the Third World War piecemeal. The world is not in a good place at the moment, and we have to help play our part in trying to be with a prophetic voice, saying that people deserve better than this.
You and I are in a country currently called Cameroon, where for the past 8 years, like you said, there has been violence in the Northwest and Southwest. And one of the key features of that violence is that of the situation of preventing children from going to school. There is an exhibition inside here where children are talking about the necessity of living in peace. I know that even when apartheid was in South Africa, people were not prevented from going to school. I know that even there was a Ku Klux Klan in the United States of America. I know that children were not prevented from going to school. Even in Gaza and the other Syrian refugee camps, people go to school. How touching is it at the Vatican when you hear that for 8 years children are prevented from going to school?
Well, this is an enormous handicap to the development of the individual, but also the development of a country. If you have a prolonged period where children don't have access to school, then you're creating a generation which is going to be not find its place in society. And we've seen that in many countries in Africa. You'll remember the child soldiers in various civil wars throughout Africa.
Sierra Leone,
places like that.
Liberia.
Yeah, Liberia, to some parts of Uganda and the and particular groups of people.
This is basically what other scholars may call theocratic diplomacy, because it's based on the principles of God. It's about spirit. Apart from prayers that the Pope does from time to time, and that men of God like you people do to quench tensions around the world, in Ukraine, in Palestine, in Gaza, in the Democratic Republic of Congo. What other actions do you people think to
well,
bring peace?
There will be humanitarian actions as well in conflict zones. That will be done by various institutions. Caritas throughout the whole of the world is very active where there is need. And also promoting where one can, when one is invited, to try and mediate, to try and come to the assistance of countries that are in difficulties, or where there is persecution, etc. Another priority of the Holy Father, which is well known and which is very topical at the moment, is obviously climate change. And the Holy See has been very much engaged in that. We have a delegation in these days in Azerbaijan participating in the COP29. It's something to which the Pope has remained very, very committed, because we believe that the future of humanity is at stake.
There are so many layers involved with the climate debate.
Yes.
How does the Vatican see as the best way to preserve humanity in fighting climate change? Is it adaptation by providing the right finances for resilience to the ecological zones of the world, the Amazon, the Congo forest, or ensuring that all the international agreements that have been signed, for example, Paris and others, are expected to keep the temperatures at 1.5 degrees Celsius even the next century?
Well, that is what we would like. We would like people to stick to the commitments that they have made. Undoubtedly, humanity has got to struggle with its relationship to fossil fuels and pollution, and it's also got to make much more progress in preserving tropical forests, in preserving the great lungs of the world, which, you know, the Amazon and other parts of the world in the Far East, and also in the Congo basin. And these are things which we would like to see people. But there is the lifestyle question as well: how we live, how we transport ourselves around the world and within our countries. And certainly there has to be lifestyle changes in the future if we are going to survive.
In a moment, the interview will come to an end. Let's talk another point of interest for the Holy Father, Pope Francis. You are his closest diplomatic advisor on an issue that is so dividing around the world, migration. We all know what is going on in the Canary Islands, around Spain, and other areas in the Mediterranean, in the Trans-Saharan area, and possibly with the return of Donald Trump in the White House and all the rhetorics that we hear. And you mentioned that about the Pope's curiosity to ensure that humanity is treated humanely yesterday in your homily, that migration is not a crime. How do you unpack all of that?
Well, I think the Holy Father is very insistent that when we talk about migration, we have to be very clear that we're talking about people and not numbers. At the same time, that we in the Church are encouraging governments and peoples to welcome and to receive people. And there are many places where migrants are well received and are cared for, are integrated as they should be. But we're also very aware that there are challenges to governments, and particularly in democratic countries, in Europe and elsewhere, North America that you just mentioned, the impact of migration on society is not insignificant. And therefore we have to also be sensitive to the fact that when migrants and immigrants can also put systems, healthcare systems, education systems, under great strain. This has been the case in various countries in Latin America because of the exodus of millions of Venezuelans. And many countries also have been very generous in receiving those migrants, but it is a reality. And therefore we have to encourage, we have to try and make our resources available and encourage generosity, but we also have to be realistic, and that's why also it is necessary to encourage governments in developed countries to engage with the places of origin of migration, so that people have also the right to remain in their country, a right to a future in their own country, and this is also a very important aspect.
Est-ce que vous avez un message particulier à la communauté chrétienne, à la conférence épiscopale nationale du Cameroun? Est-ce que vous êtes venu avec un message particulier? Je vous indique d'ailleurs que l'Église catholique romaine dans le monde entier compte 660 archidiocèses, donc vous êtes un archevêque. Et lorsque vous regardez l'Église au Cameroun, est-ce que vous avez un message particulier? En passant, je vous indique que le premier diocèse au Cameroun, c'est Boya, et jusqu'à aujourd'hui, Boya n'est pas encore un archidiocèse. Est-ce que le Vatican les a oubliés, décriés depuis 1950,
non,
le 18 avril?
Ce n'est pas question d'oublier personne.
Tout à fait.
Non, le rôle la vocation des papes, du Saint-Père actuel, Papa François, c'est de confirmer la foi de ses frères et ses sœurs. Je, comme représentant du Saint-Siège, je ne suis pas un évêque, archevêque diocésain. Je suis un archevêque titulaire. Le titre, mais pas un diocèse.
Tout à fait, tout à fait.
Mais moi aussi, venir ici, parler avec les évêques, être à côté des évêques, et aussi les laïcs, et les fidèles, c'est justement de les encourager dans leur foi, de continuer d'être source de communion, d'unité dans ce pays, d'être au service de ses frères et des sœurs ici au Cameroun.
Enfin, après ta visite, après votre présence au Cameroun, qu'est-ce qui va changer? Quelles sont les perspectives de l'Église au Cameroun?
Je crois que l'espoir de l'Église catholique au Cameroun, c'est justement autour de cet accord-cadre que nous vous souhaitons l'application entière de cet accord et nous souhaitons qu'on peut arriver peut-être à un certain protocole qui peut-être de réaliser tout le potentiel de cet accord pour travailler mieux, être plus au service et de continuer en la bonne direction.
Finally, Archbishop Paul Richard Gallagher, when you look at the myriad of problems the world is facing today, as the Vatican Secretary for Relations with other states and international organizations, simply put, the Vatican diplomat in chief, you sit in meetings on behalf of the Pope around the world, climate change discussions, peace, bilateral, multilateral institutions, and whatsoever. What do you think is the greatest challenge facing humanity each time you sit in your office at the Vatican or somewhere around the Sistine Chapel?
Well, I think that, first of all, you should not underestimate the importance and the role of the Cardinal Secretary of State, who is effectively our head of government. He also is obviously completely committed.
A kind of prime minister.
So he's completely committed to our diplomacy, and he's one of the great actors in our diplomacy. What do I believe is maybe our number one challenge today? There's no doubt about it, there is a breakdown in trust between governments and peoples. There's a breakdown in trust in international relations. This is, I think, what we should be working to try and establish. We're very supportive of the multilateral system of the UN and its agencies, so that people can work together. At the moment, people are not talking to each other. People are not really discussing, and we need to renew.
There are a lot of emotions.
There's a lot of emotions. There's a lot of bitterness. There's a lot of
fake
suffering.
news, misinformation.
Yes, but also
hate speech.
Also, there is a great deal of suffering and a great deal of anger, and we have to dissipate those things, and we have to restore peace, trust between men and women today in the world.
And with that, we end the interview, just like the Great Commission of spreading the gospel of Christ in all the ends of the world. The Vatican Secretary for Relations with other states and international organizations, the envoy of Pope Francis to Cameroon for the 10th anniversary of the signing of the framework agreement between Cameroon and the Holy See. Thank you very much indeed for being guest on my program. Muchas gracias.
De nada. Thank you very much for having me on your program, and I assure you of my prayers for the well-being of the people of this great country. God bless.
Muchas gracias.